Can you hear me, AV man and everybody else? Before we call the meeting to order, do we want to start with the pledge? Let's do so. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, everybody, for being here. My name is Jeff Bellamy. I'm the attorney for Ohio Township and helping on this fire territory process. I'm going to go through just some initial kind of place setting items. One of them is, if you came tonight and you want to testify, meaning you want to speak before the group, we just need you to sign in. One's if you're an Ohio Township resident, one is if you're a Chandler resident. So I'm going to set this over here on the table, and in the interest of time, we're going to follow Chandler's rules, which will provide 3 minutes for question, comment, whatever you want to say about the process, but just note your name and where your property is in either the township or in the town of Chandler. So I'm going to set this right over here. So to start, I just want to make sure, town of Chandler, can you confirm that you have a quorum of your board?
We do have a quorum.
Thank you, Madam Chairperson. And Ohio Township, do we have a quorum of your board?
We do, sir.
Thank you, ma'am. So what we're going to do is we're going to start this session. Again, I'm Jeff Bellamy. I notice the television is here. I'm originally from Petersburg, Indiana, and drove past my mother's house and didn't stop. So I hope she did not see me on the news. So please don't out me. I am headquartered in Indianapolis. I'm general counsel for the Township Association. I've been at this 22 years. I have no idea how many territories or districts I form. If you told me it was 20, great. If it's 30, maybe. This is the farthest south, and this year I'll be in St. Joe County. It'll be the farthest north. But I've worked all over the state of Indiana assisting communities on the setup and sometime operation of either fire territories or districts. And so what I want to do is just give you a little preview of what you're going to expect over the next several weeks for this process and these hearings. And I guess I should keep up with my own slides. That's me, that's you on the left. And then here's what I want to work with the presentation. So the Indiana Code permits local units of government to enter into a contract called an interlocal agreement to provide fire and or EMS together rather than as separate units. This is really the essence of the fire protection territory process. When I first started doing this, it became very easy to spit out the words district and territory, and now when I hear it, it's kind of like nails on a chalkboard. This is not a fire district. That is different. A fire district is created either by the county commissioners or by a landowner petition to the commissioners, and if it's formed, a district's its own special unit of government. It has its own tax authority and its own fire trustees. We are not doing that in this process. Once formed, a district has very limited ways to dissolve and is almost exclusively controlled by representatives appointed by a county. That's not all bad, but in a territory, any member may exit the territory from year to year, or a territory can be amended to add new participants depending on growth and service runs. These two units are getting together to explore the possibility of pursuing a territory. The process with this is to present to the residents of Chandler and Ohio Township the need and impact on modernizing the fire services and closing the gap on services available now and what services are needed now and in the near future, particularly in light of continuing development and tax changes coming from the state. So what is the process? The process, I just want to outline kind of at a high level. Fire territories are established by Indiana Code. To do that, you have to have 3 public hearings. Reports are going to be presented tonight and at the other 2 public hearings from Baker Tilly, which is an Indiana municipal advisory firm. Susan Cowan is with us tonight. She's a CPA and she's going to present that material. And your own chief, Scott Foreman. The fire chief's report addresses equipment, stations, manpower, current and anticipated demands, and planned service improvements. The financial report covers a 5-year financial forecast, phasing in tax impacts to more closely flow with anticipated growth. So these materials are going to be the same financial and fire department presentations at all 3 hearings. Same material presented 3 times. There's no voting at any of these meetings. These first 3 public hearings, there will be no vote. We'll take public comments at each time. So essentially, the fiscal report you hear tonight and the fire chief's report you hear tonight will be the same material we present the next 2 times. So don't feel as though if you can't come to the second or third hearing, you're missing the rest of the story. You're hearing the whole story until there's a final vote. So at the final public hearing, we'll also have a presentation about what's called a fire equipment replacement fund. That takes over for what's called a cumulative fund, and this is a fund that's allowed in the state that allows fire departments to accumulate money to build up to buy equipment. Some of you may or may not know this, but fire equipment is extraordinarily expensive, and it is a fund that allows you to act as a savings account. We will talk about that. That's the only thing that'll be different at the 3rd public hearing. As I mentioned, it's going to be the same material at each hearing. Questions may be different, and whatever the questions are, the answers may be a little different. But we're going to present the same material 3 times. Why do we present this specific material? It's presented because the Indiana Code requires it. It's primarily to demonstrate the cost of the services provided and the results that are to be expected from the investment. Because of the requirement to present these 2 categories of data, questions are going to be reserved until the end of the presentation. We're going to allow 3 minutes, like I mentioned, in accordance with the rules Chandler already provides in their meetings. So at the final meeting, and I note that, it's like territory district, he said meeting, not hearing. At the final meeting, not a public hearing, the town council and the township board can ask questions of me, ask questions of Susan or someone else from Baker Tilly, ask questions of the chief, comments across their dais or comments back and forth, whatever they want to ask questions about. There's no additional public comments at that session. So if you have public comment to make and you want to make it tonight or you want to make it at one of the other public hearings, but that is not open for public hearing, that is a public meeting you can watch. There's no additional presentation. We are not going to do the 4th part or the new material or the postscript or whatever of Chief Foreman's report, or same with Susan. Be available for questions, but there's no presentation that's done. Each unit's going to be required to approve joining the territory by a majority vote of their respective wards, and if this doesn't occur, then the territory's not approved. That's it. Full stop, that's the end of it. The equipment replacement fund's also considered for approval at this time. So Chief Foreman's report is going to address department operations. The department will answer to Chandler in Ohio Township through a joint executive board. It will be responsible for equipment planning, borrowing, education, community input, fire code inspection, enforcement, department personnel and discipline, fundraising, grants, and real estate planning. The board is locally controlled and is not operated by the state or by the county. These 2 bodies help operate this board. The volunteer departments are going to continue to participate. What you need to know, and we'll have this a couple places, is we're at the gold tile. We're at the yellow tile. We're going to come back on March 2nd in the afternoon and come back on March 2nd in the evening, and then the final public meeting is going to be on March 16th. That's the hearing schedule, and that's what's been published. So we'll be back to put on the same presentation 2 more times that you hear tonight, take comments at those sessions, and then the final public meeting will be on March 16th. So appreciate your kind attention. Again, if you're going to speak, you need to sign up. You can do that now while the presentations are going on. Still a valid public meeting if you're just here to listen. But if you want to speak, be sure to sign in. We're going to pass this over to Chief Foreman. Chief, do you want to present from here, or are you going to roam? Okay.
I'm Chief Scott Foreman with Ohio Township Fire Department. And just a second, we'll have a presentation up here. All right, we have the meeting agenda. We talked about the locations. Why a fire territory? It's all about operational readiness. In our job, we don't get second chances. We got to be ready every single time we get dispatched. So with the decreasing number of volunteers over the past decades, and this isn't the fire service. This is civic groups. This is church groups, clubs, civic clubs. And you see a national trend everywhere in those areas. So this is not just the fire service, okay? The National Volunteer Fire Council, which is who represents the volunteer fire service in the United States, their data supports the numbers that we're talking about. We actually have their numbers in our presentation. Increasing call volume. Both departments have seen a large increase in emergency calls over the last few years, okay? You'll see a drastic one from 23 to 24, and we'll explain that here in just a little bit. Hiring full-time is going to help with the volunteer shortage. Okay, it's going to guarantee a fire apparatus staffed at each fire station in Ohio Township and Chandler. Increased levy to help support operations. Warwick County Council has even stated this. You know, there's public safety lit money out there, but when we went to their meetings, they're saying you have to get creative, you have to look outside, you have to look at district, you have to look at territory, and that's exactly what we've done. And that's why it's so popular across the state. Increased cost of training, equipment, and apparatus. Fire apparatus, $1 million now, easy. Ladder trucks, $2.5 million. Training, equipment, gear, all that is super expensive. This is going to help fund that type of equipment also. Increased demands on firefighters, okay? It's not just the runs, it's the training. The training is very extensive, and it's not something where you can just come and go as you want. It's mandatory, and we'll go over that in our presentation too. The big thing is liability and litigation risk to our communities and to ourselves. Okay, if we're not providing a service, we open up that to us. We open up that to our towns, our townships, and even our fire officers. So all this is why we're doing what we're doing. And it's all about them. We are here to protect them. Them as our community. Them as our stakeholders. And if we're not here to protect them, I don't really know why we're here. Okay, that's what the fire service is all about. The National Volunteer Fire Council, again, these are their numbers. Their data only goes to 21, but you can see a decrease from when they started tracking this in 1984. On the left, they talk about what are some of the reasons, and it's really long. I'm not going to go through it all, but time demands is one of the big ones. Okay, families are doing two-income families. They're having to work extra jobs. Kids are in club sports, groups. There's just not the time that there used to be. Training requirements, again, it's huge and it's mandatory. I'm not going to sign off, and nobody's going to sign off on you to be able to do it if you don't attend half the fire classes. The state of Indiana, you have to register the class, and not only do you register it, they're going to come and possibly audit it. They have auditors throughout the state that are going to make sure that you're putting on a class that you say you're putting on. And obviously the increasing call volume. That's happening across the country. Every fire department is seeing an increase. A lot of it is medically related type increases, okay? But you're seeing increases across the nation in the fire service. Here's our call volumes, okay? We have Ohio Township on the top. Like I said, you see in 23 to 24, it was a drastic increase, okay? During COVID, the medical direction in Warwick County said, hey, we're going to throttle back our EMS calls because of COVID, okay? So we reduced our number of calls that we went on drastically. We really only, like, if it was not an EMS request or CPR, we really didn't go, okay? In 24, both Chandler and Ohio Township elected to follow the protocol that everybody else was following. Newburgh, Elberfeld, Boonville, Skelton Owen, Linville. They all were doing what we weren't doing. So in 24, we decided to follow the recommendation of the medical direction, and that's why you see an increase. We provide a basic life support service to our stakeholders. And most of the time, it's called first response. And again, it's an industry standard across the country in the fire service. But we are there to first respond for the ambulance service. And a lot of times, we get there first. And we have all the equipment and necessary skills to provide care for those individuals. You'll see at the bottom slide, we talk about overlapping calls. This is another huge thing in the fire service, hitting both departments. But we not only get dispatched to one call, but we get dispatched to 2 calls, 3 calls, all at the same time. And we run a 27% average. Anything over 13% in the fire service, they tell you better start looking at other means of providing that coverage because there's a huge gap there. We've seen as high as 40%, and that's on a month. That's a huge overlapping percentage for us. Chief, would you like to talk about yours? Where's it at? No. All right, you do see a trend for Chandler. They're trending up even more, and that's due to a response change in our county, trying to get the effective response force, trying to get the right number of people on the scene of emergencies on every emergency. So we do a lot more automatic aid because we just weren't hitting the marks on getting those numbers there. okay, trying to get 15 firefighters at every emergency. We weren't hitting it. So with automatic aid, everybody in the county is running a few more calls, but it's to hit that standard for the safety of the stakeholders and the responders. Training to become a certified firefighter. It shouldn't say just volunteer. It's firefighter across the board. Okay, firefighter 1 and 2 is the same across the board. It's regulated by NFPA. States adopt those standards. Okay, so if you come from Florida and you're like, I got firefighter 1 and 2, they did the same amount of training that Indiana said, at least the minimum standard. Okay, sometimes you get more, sometimes you don't get less. You always get more. So this is the basic standard. Firefighter 1 and 2, hazmat awareness and ops. This is to be an interior firefighter in the state of Indiana, because they have recognized NFPA's standard for what it takes to be a firefighter. The minimum is 180 hours, 22 weeks. Okay, like I said, mandatory attendance. If you miss a class, you got to find a way to make it up, because you have to have that skill set to be able to do it. There's mandatory or physical objectives. Okay, you actually have to pull the hose. You have to actually climb the ladder. You have to, go out the window. You have to cut a hole in a roof. All these are required skills. It's extremely high physical demand, but again, our job is extremely high physical demand. Emergency medical technician, okay? There's EMR, which is a first responder, and emergency medical technician, okay? This is what we use to provide medical care to our community, okay? Basic life support. It's 164 hours. It's a 20-week class. Again, it's mandatory attendance, okay? And most of the times you'll have to go to like an Ivy Tech, or some of the other departments offer different kinds of schools. But again, it's a challenging class to have to get, and it's mandatory. 2 days a week typically, and again, mandatory attendance, 4 hours a night. Federal government also has come out and said we got to have everybody trained to a certain incident management level, and it's called NIMS. Okay, there's 4 classes, 16 hours. Those are online. Fairly simple, but again, it's a requirement that we have to meet. OSHA, or OSHA mandate 2 in, 2 out, okay? And just for your reference, NFPA is a standard. It's a recommendation, okay, that a lot of states adopt those recommendations, okay, and they put them into law. OSHA is law. I can be arrested if I don't follow OSHA standards, okay? I can tell you, the previous job I worked at, they came in, they made me raise my right hand, they swore under oath that I was going to tell the truth and whole truth, because we had a serious technical rescue operation, and they wanted to make sure that everybody that was there did exactly what they were supposed to. They wanted to know if the entrant, the guy that went in the hole, was certified. And they just didn't want my word on it. They wanted to see his certification. They wanted to make sure that he had been fit tested on the mask he was wearing. I had to show him proof of that. They wanted to make sure our fit test machine had been certified. Again, these are all OSHA standards, okay? Luckily, we followed everything like we were supposed to. But that's what it is, and this is law. It scared me, because I'd never been in a situation like that, and luckily, doing it right is always right. That's my motto. So we followed it, and we were lucky. 1710, 1720, NFPA, okay, again, standard, okay, but this is a standard that's adopted by most industry in most states. Okay, 1710 refers to combination and career fire departments. 1720 is volunteer. Okay, 1710 requires a full complement of staffed apparatus equipped with trained firefighters, 15 to 17 of them within 8 minutes. Do we meet that mark? Absolutely not. Okay, our goal is to get there. Okay, but we're not getting it now. Okay, the standards that set minimum criteria for effective and efficient emergency response operations. Again, that's our goal, effective and efficient. 1720 is what regulates volunteer fire service. Okay, Chandler is categorized as an urban community, okay, because of the population density, so it's 1325, is that right, Chief, per square mile, which classifies you as urban, okay? 15 equipped, trained firefighters within 9 minutes, 90% of the time. Do you want to comment on any of that?
Same as Ohio Township. We're not hitting that mark of 15 people in 9 minutes.
No. So again, it's a standard that we want to do it. And NFPA is what we use. That's what regulates our gear. That's what regulates our trucks. That's what regulates our firefighting equipment. And we want it to be NFPA approved, because we want to make sure it's safe for every one of these firefighters in the room. We want to make sure it's going to work for the stakeholders. But the other thing about NFPA, that's what they use to come after us. Did you follow this? Were you doing this? Did they have this training? Just like I was said with the confined space thing. They want to make sure that we're following NFPA, and that's what they're going to say in the court of law. because they put these standards out, and this is the recommendation. 1710 staffing levels, 4 personnel on each apparatus within 4 minutes of or they should arrive within 4 minutes. That's our goal. Okay, that's our goal to do. Okay, do we meet it every time? You can see at the bottom we don't. I'm very proud of our time, but I'll be honest with you. The reason our time is 5 minutes, 19 seconds is because this station is the busiest, this station is staffed, and a lot of our runs are close to here. Okay, so we get lucky with that. But current full-time staffing, 4 of them here at Ohio Township and a battalion chief. So 5 total here, 0 career staffing right now at Chandler. The average response time for dispatch to on scene, okay, this is across the board, okay, for us was 5 minutes, 19 seconds. Like I said, a lot are close to here. We get a lot of 1 and 2 minute response times. That helps us out a lot on an average, okay? Chandler, do you want to talk about yours? Or?
Just for full clarity, the 11:23 is an overall time. We do a lot of mutual aid with Ohio Township, Boonville. We've been to Vandenberg County. Our average arrival time in town limits was 8 minutes and 25 seconds, but same as here. The town's not very big. It takes us a minute and a half to get across town just about anywhere.
So the functional position on the fire ground, this just kind of shows you what it is, the breakdown of the 15 members. But the home fire timeline on the backside, and I think everybody in here that's a firefighter can understand this, but fires are burning hotter and faster than they ever have. Okay, what does that mean to us? We have less time to get there and be effective. Okay, if you guys watch the news, what just happened in Evansville 2 nights ago? 3 juveniles, okay, in a house. All pulled out by the fire companies. Fire companies were very effective and efficient there. Right downtown, great crews, great grabs, okay? A few minutes longer, would the result have been the same? It's still a tragic result, but it wouldn't have even been attempted probably, okay? So the goal is to get there as quick as you can to facilitate those rescues. And our timeline continues to tick down. It's not ticking up. We're not getting more time. We're getting less time. This number's big. This slide is big to me. I'm a big number person. None of this stuff in this PowerPoint, this presentation, is what Scott Foreman thinks. Okay, it's not my opinion. It's all data driven. Okay, by the industry, by NFPA. Okay, so if you look at the ratio, city and town population to staffing, Ohio Township covers 44,000 people. We have 2 stations. We have 18 career staff on duty. Okay, and this is NFPA's number for career staff to population base. Okay. When you divide the 18 by 3 and divide it by the population, we're a 0.13. Okay? That's a pretty low number. Okay? NFPA says you should be 0.87 to 0.132 per 1,000 people of your population. You can see Evansville. Population, the city proper itself, 115, 14 stations, 273. They're a 0.79. Okay, and you go up through it. The ones that shock me are like Bedford and Vincennes, 16,000 population, 4 stations, 41 staff. They're a 0.82. Our goal is to get as close to that as possible. Okay, because again, that's providing that efficient and effective service to our stakeholders. You can see the ratio number on the side. The top line is where we're at today, 0.13. We just went to a 0.13 by adding a staff person to our department, adding an inspector. Okay, 27 will be at a 0.39 for 2 years. 29 will go to a 0.48, and 31 will go to a 0.57. All right. Now, the cool part of this number that you don't see here is we have volunteers. We're a combination department. Okay. I call volunteers a force multiplier. Okay. This station may be only staffed with 1 truck, 4 guys on it. If I put 5 guys on each truck that's staffed, I now take that 0.57 up to almost 0.67. Okay, if I staff an extra ladder truck at Chandler Fire Station, now I'm going to almost a 0.77. So our goal is use that force multiplier. It may not be all the time. It may not be 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. But our goal is to use that force multiplier to get that number up even more. So we can fall in line with some of those numbers that we want to be, those higher numbers. Community risk reduction is huge. Okay, this is our inspection program. This is our fire education. We want to be proactive. We want to provide the service, and we want to prevent things from happening as much as we can. So this is something we can bring to the table. The best part of the fire service is those 2 slides on the left, getting to go to schools and getting to help with the public education. They love it. Okay, that's one of the best jobs, but it's making sure buildings are marked, making sure sprinkler systems are working, making sure the alarm systems are working. So this is an initiative that they'll go across the entire territory, a service that we'll be able to provide. Current staffing, we've already talked about some of this, but we have 18 full-time staffing at Ohio Township. Okay, a fire chief, myself, deputy chief, 1 inspector, division chief, 3 shifts. Okay, we work 48-hour shifts, and we're off for 96 hours. Okay, we're one of 5 departments in the state that are working this. It's a great shift. It's a great program because it lets the guys actually have some time off to help with their mental health. 5 per shift. We're on 24/7, 365. There's a battalion chief, which is like the boss over that shift, a captain, a lieutenant, and 2 firefighters. We have volunteers. We have a volunteer district chief over the volunteer battalion. We have 40 volunteers. 75% are medically certified. They're either EMR or EMT. That's a great number. I like to brag about that because they've gone the extra step to get that certification. 25%, so 10 of our 40 volunteers are non-interior firefighters. That's a big number, okay? But when you look at it, 10 of the 40, a lot of it is because they've chose not to do it. Maybe they're not certified yet, or maybe they want to work on our safety program. They want to provide safety aspects to us, okay? So we look at all those, and we're excited about the numbers we have. Can we do better? Absolutely. We can always do better. Chief, you want to talk about yours? All right, Chandler has 0 full-time. The volunteers consist of 5 volunteer command staff. They have 30 volunteers currently, and numbers fluctuate in the volunteer fire service. You know, sometimes you're going up, sometimes you're going down. It just depends. 43% are medically certified with EMR or above, and then 53% are non-interior. Okay, they're doing a Fire 1 and 2 class right now. That's going to change that number drastically. Okay, but those are numbers we have to look at. So when I say non-interior, that means technically when you pull up at the front of the house, they can't go in the fire to help fight it or to do the search. Okay, so we got to make sure we're providing the service that we say we are. There's no other service in Warwick County that provides fire protection. The fire department's the only one that does it. Sheriff's department's not going to do it. EMS is not going to do it. It's the fire service. Proposed service levels, so we're going to increase our career staff to each station in Ohio Township and Chandler. That's going to provide effective and efficient coverage to all emergency calls throughout our area. Fires, motor vehicle accidents, medical emergencies, and technical rescues. Technical rescues is a huge aspect in our area. Vehicle extrications, rope, which is mostly low grade, not high angle. Confined space, water, rescue, trench, building collapse. There's tons of building in our area. There's tons of construction. That means there's tons of trenches and there's tons of confined spaces constantly. There's tons of water in our area. If you've driven through our area, you know there's lakes everywhere. Okay, we just had one the other night. Vehicle ended up out on the lake. Okay, we have to be ready for those services. We can't, when they call for help, show up and say, hey, yeah, we don't really do that. We're going to have to wait a little bit for somebody else to show up. Okay, or maybe nobody's going to show up. That's not the answer we have. And then if we put our people in risk, now there's liability on us for that. So everybody on shift will be fully trained in all those disciplines to be able to provide those services. Every full-time staff member will be a certified EMT. So we're providing the highest level of basic life support. The next level up is paramedic, like what the ambulance service provides. Okay, we have paramedics, but they can't operate at paramedic level when they work at the fire department. Just basic life support, EMTs. The town of Chandler will transition from all volunteer to having career staff engine, which will guarantee an emergency response. Is that a big deal? It is a big deal. Okay, again, seconds count, and we get one shot to get it right. Okay, it might be the difference between, life or death. Okay, and I brag about this, and she's in the room, but my mom collapsed a few years ago, and I'd never been the recipient of our service until that night. My wife said, she's unconscious, which she was. Within 2 minutes, I heard an Evansville fire engine coming down the road, and by then, I'd kind of regained myself in what I was doing. I've been an EMT for 30 years. I should know what I'm doing, and I was baffled. As my mom on the ground. I was like, what the heck's going on? And those guys came in and basically held her hand and held my hand. And to be a recipient of the service, I had a different perspective of what it did, okay, and what we actually provide. And they were there quick, okay? She's fine, she's right there. But it's, it's just having that aspect of it is important. And again, one shot to get it right. The other thing is reducing the stress of the volunteers, okay? We do make a lot of medical runs. Those guys are going on a medical run right now. Okay, we do make a lot of medical runs. The career staff engine can help cover those medical costs to keep the volunteers from having to go out as much. If they want to make medical runs, they can be there and they can make medical runs. Promise, okay? They do it all the time. We run multiple trucks multiple days a week, which is exciting. The full-time inspector, we talked about that already. That will overlay onto the town of Chandler and help provide the safety to our stakeholders to prevent accidents from happening. Planned staffing for 2027. Okay, so the first year we'll have 13 full-time personnel on shift each day. You have myself, you have the deputy chief, we're Monday through Friday. You have battalion chief, which is a shift worker. You have 2 division chiefs, okay, that will be adding a division chief of training, okay, because if the continuity is important. We got to make sure all 3 shifts and all the volunteers are at the level they need to be at and getting the same message across the board, because communication is the key, okay? So we'll have 2 division chiefs. You'll have Ohio Township Station 1, which is this location. You'll have an engine company with a captain and 3 firefighters, one of those being a lieutenant. You'll have a Station 2 staff with an engine company, 1 captain, 3 firefighters. You'll have Chandler Station staff with 1 engine company, a captain, 2 firefighters, and a lieutenant. Okay, again, your volunteer staff is not going away. It's staying. Okay, it will be a combination department. There's a lot of huge combination departments out there that function every day, and they function great. And that's what we are going to be. That's what we want to be. So, again, you have 2 volunteer chief officers, 1 over the Chandler district, 1 over the Ohio Township district. Like I said, we talked about volunteer staffing already. We'll have 2 volunteer chiefs. The big thing I like about this is it's the continuity, okay? It's somebody they recognize. It's somebody they've worked with for years, okay? And they can go through, and they're comfortable with that person. Okay, so that's the continuity there that we have by bringing a volunteer chief on. They report to the fire chief. There's still chain of command. There's still requirements. There's still standards. Okay, because we want to make sure that everybody has that standard level of care and service. The volunteer staffing is going to be used to staff additional apparatus. Okay, increase staffing on staff units. Like I said, if we can take a 4-man engine company to a 5-man engine company, win. It's a big win. Okay, if we can staff 2 trucks tonight, we're staffing 3. Okay, but if we can staff 2 trucks, again, it's a win for our community. Because the more we can keep fire trucks in service for the next call, the better off we're going to be. Fill in for vacant full-time positions. We have what we call a stipend program, so volunteers are able to work and fill in for vacant full-time positions. Again, it's an opportunity to get that experience and that coverage. Overlapping call coverage, so we have people come back for calls because we 27% of the time, we're making another call. It's a lot. And area coverage, when emergency calls happen, okay? So if we're at a fire and we have 3-4 trucks tied up on a call, that doesn't mean Ohio Township doesn't deserve coverage anymore, okay? We have to try to staff trucks to keep coverage in this area. If we're not doing it, we're having to ask our neighbors at Newburgh to do it, and if they're most likely going to be at the fire with us, we may have to reach out to Evansville and have them help us cover some calls, maybe Boonville. It's a ripple effect. We all help each other, but our goal is to provide coverage to our stakeholders as much as we can by adding those additional trucks in service. By 2031, we'll have 4 stations, 5 apparatus staffed under this plan, this phase-in plan. That's 21 personnel per shift. You have the same administrative staff. We'll add some secretarial type, HR type positions because that's a very challenging part of my job. We'll have 67 personnel total, okay? Again, volunteers aren't going away. I worked for the city of Henderson prior to this job. We had 4 stations. We had 20 people on shift every day. I wish I had volunteers every day to bring extra apparatus into staffing models because we would run out on 1 house fire. So it was very stressful to provide coverage. This is our area distribution. You see on the left, this is our current staffing plan, our station plan. So what the colors represent are the 1.5 mile industry standard for what a fire station can cover. It's 1.5 mile road miles. It's not by the way the crow flies. It's not a circle. So you look at it, and that's why they're kind of weird. It's just because maybe there's not roads to get to that certain section of that area. But our goal is to not necessarily overlap the colors, but come really close to touching. So Paradise and Chandler, that's not a bad coverage gap, okay? The location for Station 1 and Station 2, again, not any overlap, okay, but they come right up and touch each other. The other goal is to cover as many stakeholders as you possibly can, cover as much AV, assess value as you possibly can, because again, that's our job. So the proposed fire station will be down there, no specific location, but like say the 66 and Sharon area, okay? We'll have to start looking for something, but that area right there picks up a large population base for our Ohio Township and our AV. So that's kind of what we're looking at for the future in 2031. This is our personnel cost currently. On the left, you'll see what we make now, our salaries. At the bottom is our overtime cost, $250. What we're proposing is a $600,000 overtime budget. And then the salaries did go up. Okay, we implemented a raise. Okay, in our industry, we have to stay competitive with the other industries, with the other fire services. Okay, so our goal is to be in line with Evansville, Boonville, Chandler, Owensboro, Princeton. Okay, because if not, we're training firefighters just to leave. Okay, because a lot of them they want to follow where the money is. Okay, so our goal is to have a very decent plan. Okay, as far as pay plan. And again, this is in line with everybody else. This is not above, this is in line. So the proposed cost for 27, as you can see, personnel is the big number, okay, on everything. 3.4 million just for personnel. That's salaries, pretty much. Insurance is another huge cost. Huge cost. 1.5 million for insurance. $1 million for the PERF. That's our Public Employment Retirement Fund. Everybody would be in PERF 77, which is the Fire and Police Retirement Fund. Social Security and Medicare. So firefighters don't get paid Social Security. They do get paid Medicare. And then we'll still have a few civilian staff, like myself, that will receive Social Security. So that's where that budget line comes in. And then education, we factored in the education costs for guys to be able to get education, training, college, whatever, raises, their gear, their clothing, their uniforms, and other allowances, and then also holiday pay. If they work a holiday, they get a bonus that day, like a $150 bonus. Okay, so that's the 464, and then the overtime cost for a grand total of 7.1 million. Services and supplies, or supplies and services, this is what it costs to run. This is building maintenance, this is fuel, okay, this is paying for the attorneys, paying for the CPAs, paying for your insurance on your building, travel and training, medical exams. We provide everybody an FPA medical exam, and some reoccurring capital. That comes out to 1.9 million for a total budget of 10.257. Okay, you can see it all, and that includes the equipment replacement fund that the attorney was talking about, the 1.1 million, 1.2 million. Okay, and that's to replace apparatus. Apparatus extremely expensive. Capital improvement plan just shows a 6-year plan. Again, just an idea of what we'd be looking at. The thing about capital plans is they change all the time. Okay, you have to change by your demands and what you need. Okay, but this is kind of the surface plan of what we had. We would replace most of the radios to public safety grade radios. Again, NFPA has a standard for what a radio should be for the fire service. We are 50% fire service radios, and all the radios we have are about 10 years old. Again, 10 years in the fire service is that mark that you have to start looking at replacing. So $200,000 budget for the first year for radios. A larger number for gear, you're looking at about $7,000 for a set of gear, $6,000 to $7,000 for a set of gear. That includes boots, gloves, helmets. So a big number there because of the additional staff and trying to get everybody into 2 sets of bunker gear. 2 sets of bunker gear is the industry, the national standard because of cancer. Trying to give the guys a second set of gear so they can decon and wash them as they need to prevent exposure. SCBAs, all our SCBAs at both departments are 2 cycles out, so we're at the need of having to replace air packs, and it's 2 different brands. So we would look at a SCBA replacement plan the first year. A boat, between mutual aid agreements with the United States Coast Guard, we have the ability to respond to about 30 miles of waterways between Indiana and Kentucky. Just something that would provide a little bit better vessel for that type of response. And then again, 1.2 million for a fire truck. It may not come in at exactly 1.2, but they're definitely over $1 million now. So you can see across the board, fire gear is an annual replacement. It fluctuates on how much each year. You see a slight increase on some of the trucks as they go across, just because there's annual increases on fire trucks. Brief explanation, I kind of went over this, of what it is. Fire gear lasts 10 years if it lasts 10 years. Most gear is not lasting 10 years, it's wearing out before that. But if not, at the 10-year mark, we got to get rid of it. That's boots, that's gloves, that's helmets, that's whatever. You have to get rid of it and get the new stuff. That's the standard. SCBA's, we talked about that. Also, a new station. We talked about the new station, to add the 4th station, some station renovations and some station improvements to add a 5th company or a 2nd company to this station. So you can kind of just see overall the year 1 capital improvement plan. You can see what we're talking about. Again, 2005 apparatus. We have 1. Chandler has 3, I believe, right, Chief? 3. And again, 20 years the recommended life for a fire apparatus in an industry like this. You can run them longer, as long as you maintain them. But the goal is to kind of replace them with newer technology. So again, trying to replace that. You see the gear, the air packs, trying to upgrade to a different type of air pack or a newer style air pack to be in compliance with that, and then radios. The thing about capital, like it says there, is it's changing. None of this may happen. We have to do something different, okay? But these are our goals. This is our plan. You have to have a plan when you're going into this type of work, just so you can budget your future. Shows the ladder truck. The ladder truck's a 2013, so in 2033, it will be 20 years old. Thing about fire trucks, pumpers, engines are about a 3 to 4 year build time, depending on what industry or what manufacturer you go with. Ladder trucks are pushing 5 years for a build time. Ready? All right. Thank you.
Actually, I'll use the one on the stand. I probably won't walk. Good evening. I'm Susan Cowan with Baker Tilly from Indianapolis. So as the second required thing that has to happen tonight, I have a presentation on how the plan that the chief just discussed will impact property taxes for homeowners within the town of Chandler and Ohio Township, and how the territory will potentially affect other taxing units within the county. So Attorney Bellamy has already covered quite a bit of this information, why we're doing this. It's statutorily required. The statute says somebody must come talk to local citizens about the financial impacts of the territory. Really, a fire territory or the fire district that was alluded to earlier are about one of the only ways that units can come together and increase property tax levies in support of a specific service. There's nothing like this for police or sheriff's departments. There's nothing like this for park service. There's nothing like this for roads. The statute only specifically addresses fire service, and it only accounts for changes in property tax levy. So all the results are based upon home values and property tax amounts currently paid in the taxing districts, in the areas. So I get asked every year, can't we do this some other way? Can't it be by runs or by population? Unfortunately, no. The statute says it has to be based upon allocation of property tax, and that the legislative and fiscal bodies for both the units have to vote to approve to go forward with the territory. If it's approved here locally, information from all of these hearings, information on the budget, the presentation that I'm going to give, the presentation that the fire chief gave, is all bundled up and sent to a department in the state called the Department of Local Government Finance. They're the ones that control all things property tax in the state. They will then evaluate the information. They will make sure that the meeting announcements were done correctly. They will make sure that all of the information here was handled correctly and presented correctly. They will be the ones making the final determination. If the territory passes and it gets sent to the DLGF and the DLGF approves it, that would be sometime this summer. and new property tax levy amounts would be expected next year in 2027 on your 2027 tax bills. We have the dates here again for the meetings. Again, that March 16th meeting, that's the adoption meeting. These presentations will not be given that night. It will be votes, questions, discussions, and/or votes by these fiscal bodies. As we already have mentioned previously, Ohio Township will act as the provider unit. The provider unit, if you want to think about it, is kind of the administrative unit of the territory. So the goal here is we are providing fire service based upon a single tax rate across everyone in the town of Chandler and in Boone Township. However, one unit collects that money and makes the payments and ultimately approves the budgets. That will be Ohio Township. Chandler will benefit from the receipt of that money because the fire department will then be under the umbrella of the territory, and they will receive via the plans that the chief just went over, improved service. So that's how Chandler will take part in addition to their participation on the Fire Territory Advisory Board. So in Indiana, only elected bodies can approve budgets. So that's why the Fire Territory Board cannot approve its own budget. It's a recommending body. They will recommend a budget to the Ohio Township Board, and they will ultimately approve the budget. The trustee will make sure everything gets entered for the Department of Local Government Finance budget process every year, and that everything is being levied correctly and taken care of correctly. The units have opted to do a 5-year rate phase-in. There's either an option of you start with a maximum budget year 1, and that's the budget going forward. In this case, they're doing a 5-year phased-in plan. You saw what the coverage is right now for fire service, what the planned coverage is in 2031. So the 3 years in between that are meant to roughly support the budgets as coverage is stepped in and personnel are added at each point in the 3 interim years. So the steps of this process are, first, we determine how the units are currently paying for fire. What is the current tax rate for fire? We then look at the budget. We come up to the tax rate necessary to support that budget. Then look at replacing the current rate with the new rate. The statute clearly says you can't continue to have existing levy in place for fire if you're adding new. So there's a net effect as we take out what the units are currently paying for fire and replace it with the new. Then we determine the impacts to taxpayers based upon those revised tax rates, and ultimately what the impacts would be to overlapping units, such as the county, the school, library within Warwick County. So here are the receipts currently brought in by each unit for fire service. So as a township, Ohio Township has a specific fire levy and a specific cumulative fire levy. So the main fire levy is for operating purposes. The cumulative or capital one is for long-term accrual and replacement of capital equipment. The township also currently receives some local income tax that Warwick County has distributed to township and volunteer departments. We don't know for sure if that will continue next year. And then in 2028, there is a major overhaul of the local income tax system in Indiana due to Senate Enrolled Act 1 that was adopted last year. So even though there may be future lit receipts, which the territory could take into account and potentially decrease future levies if the county provides local income tax, currently we are not assuming local income tax for the territory going from 2027 to 2031. So the township has about $854,400 in cumulative receipts for the equipment, for their cumulative capital fund, and then their operating receipts for that are almost $3 million, $2,990,000. The town of Chandler uses a portion of their general fund to pay for fire service currently, plus some of the public safety income tax that they receive. Currently, the county and all municipal units receive local public safety local income tax. So Chandler splits it between their police service and their fire service. They currently receive about $318,400 in revenue. So when we calculate that based upon their current assessed values in those areas, for the town of Chandler, the portion that they use for their general fund is equivalent to about a little more than a quarter cents, 0.0444. That's 4 cents per $100 of net assessed valuation. So that's the part that we will replace with the fire territory rate. Ohio Township, because they have specific levies for fire, has a somewhat higher rate. They're almost 12 cents, 0.1193. So that portion will be removed for Ohio Township. They will still have a general fund operating levy for other township functions, such as township assistance, supportive parks. So the township does not lose their entire levy, but they lose the portion that's currently allocated only to fire. The next 2 pages you saw most of in the chief's presentation. It's the budget detail. So the first year budget detail matches what he had in his presentation. The other 3 years are estimates based upon planned staffing changes as to where those budgets will end up for years going forward. So if the DLGF approves the rate step-in that the territory is asking for, they will be held to that specific rate each year. If net assessed value changes within the town of Chandler or Ohio Township such that revenues are less than we have anticipated, the township will have to work on the territory budget within the revenues that they have allowed. So the territory will be funded by property tax and supplemental motor vehicle taxes. Every unit in the state that receives property tax also receives a share of its county's local motor vehicle receipts. Please don't think that means that the license plates on your car are going to go up because they're forming a fire territory. It just means they will still collect the same amount. It will just be distributed slightly differently. Currently, it's based upon relative proportion of levy to all other levies in the county. So where we're adding levy because of the territory, some of those motor vehicle excise taxes will go to the territory and it will cause shifts amongst other units. And we have a slide towards the end of the presentation that covers that. This is the page that shows the rates that are being planned in support of fire territory going forward. It's the blue line across the bottom. So the first year, the addition would be 0.2875, stepping up 2 3/4 cents to 0.3150, then up 3 cents to 0.3450, up another 3 cents to 0.3750, and ultimately to 40 cents. 40 cents is the current statutory maximum that a fire territory can put in place. Prior to last year, there was no maximum cap. In Senate Enrolled Act 1 last year, a cap was written in on fire territories. So a unit or units that form territories after January 1, 2025 cannot have a rate higher than 40 cents. So sometimes people ask, what happens to debt? You know, how is debt going to be handled in the territory? So both units, the township and town of Chandler, both currently have debt, but that debt cannot be rolled into the territory operating budget. That stays separately with the citizens that currently, on those properties that currently are included in the rate for those debts. So Ohio Township has debt outstanding for the purchase of some fire trucks. That matures in 2028. So going forward, hopefully they would be able to use the equipment replacement fund to purchase trucks going forward. So currently there's not plans for debt, even though there may be in the future. Currently there's not plans. It depends on what they can do with the equipment replacement fund money that they have going forward. Chandler has some debt outstanding for a fire station that they're currently paying for with their public safety lit. So going forward, they will find local income tax sources to continue to pay for that debt. That's going out through 2044. The territory itself cannot specifically issue debt. It is not a standalone municipal corporation. Like I said, it's a sub-department of the provider unit of the township. So if debt were have to be issued ever in the future, it would not automatically be on both units at the same amount. The township may have to issue one unit, the town may have to issue, or rate, and township may have to issue another. But again, as I said, there's currently not plans for debt, but the territory itself cannot specifically issue debt. So now we start on the impacts to your tax rates. I want to give you just a brief explanation of how tax rates work in Indiana. And I know it can be dry and it can be long, and I don't want to take it on longer than possible, but I think just so everybody understands how the calculation is done, that's what we need to do. So we start with the current district rate. What is a district rate? When you pay property taxes, that money doesn't go back just to one place. So if you live in Ohio Township, when you pay your annual property tax bill, it doesn't go just to Ohio Township. A portion of it goes to Warwick County, a portion of it goes to the school, a portion of it goes to the library, and yes, a portion of it does go currently to the township. So each year during the budget process, units work with the DLGF to determine what their tax rates are for the incoming year. So last summer, Ohio Township and Chandler went through the budget process. They came up with their local unit rate, which is combined with the unit rates of other overlapping districts, like the county, the library, the school, to arrive at a district rate. The district rate is then applied based upon where the property is and what units have the authority to levy tax in that area, in that township, or in that school district. So if you live in the Boone Township portion of the town of Chandler, your tax rate in 2026 is 1.8578, or almost a little over $1.85 per $100 of net assessed valuation. Everything property tax in Indiana is done on a per $100 of assessed valuation basis. So a few slides earlier, I mentioned that Chandler's current rate for fire is a little over 4 cents. So we have to delete that 0.0444, replace it with 0.2875. That's a net impact effect on the tax rate of 0.2431. And I understand that you're going to look at me and say, but aren't other units' rates going to change potentially next year too? Yes, they are. We don't know how they're going to change. They could go down. We don't know if somebody issues debt. We don't know what the school's planning. We don't know what the library's planning for next year. We don't even know what the county's planning for next year. But right now, all we can assume is that those rates, other rates would be at their maximum amounts. They wouldn't get any higher. They could most likely be lower. So we believe that this rate of 2.1009 per $100 of assessed valuation would be the maximum rate that you would see because of the fire territory in 2027. That's roughly a 13.1% impact to the tax rate and the total tax bill for the Boone Township portion of Chandler. Remember that 13.1%. I'm going to get into some examples of what it might do to specific home value tax bills. So if your home value is not one that I'm talking about, if it's, for example, $175,000 or $325,000, you can take your tax bill times this 13.1%, or times 1.13.1%, and come up with a rough idea of what your bill would be with the territory in 2027. So the math is the same for Ohio Township in the middle column, except we have a different rate to replace. We're replacing 0.1193 for them. They're starting with a rate of 1.3989. The net impact is 0.1682. That brings their 2027 estimated rate up to 1.5671. That's a 12% increase for homes just in Ohio Township. Then there's also an Ohio Township portion of the town of Chandler. Part of that town lies within Ohio Township. Their current tax rate for 26 will be 1.9712. When you replace, again, they have the same net effect as Chandler Boone Township because they're paying the same amount for fire. Their rate would go up to 2.2143, or roughly a 12.3% increase. The next 2 pages go through the steps of adding that 2 3/4 cents in 2028, the 3 cents in 29 and 30, and then the 2.5 cents in 2031. Those amount to somewhere between a 1 and a 2% increase in most of them are in the 1.2 to 1.4. Ohio Townships is a bit more. They're more in the 1.8 to 1.9% increase in subsequent years. That's on these next 2 pages. Again, they're the bolded numbers at the bottom are the annual estimated increase to tax bills. They roughly add up to about a 17.3% increase total from 2027 to 2031 for Chandler Boone Township, about 18% for Ohio Township, and roughly 17.1% for Chandler, Ohio Township. So again, here's just sort of a handy summary instead of having to look back through each of the columns with all of the numbers on the previous 3 pages. So now we have some examples of what particular home values might see, how their changes might work with the new tax rates going forward. So when your property is assessed for taxes, you have what's called a gross assessed value assigned to your property by the county assessor. That's not the amount that you just maybe bought your house for. That's not the amount that Open Door sends you a letter saying that we can buy your house for this. It's not what Zillow says the average sale price is. It's specifically an assessed value assigned by the county. Then, if it's a homestead, meaning it's your primary home, and you have filed the homestead deduction with the Warwick County Auditor, you get a series of deductions off of that amount. So in this case, if you have the first example I have here is a $200,000 home. You get initially a $48,000 homestead deduction off of that value. So that takes it down to $152,000. You then have about 37.5% that then also comes, an additional 37.5% that comes off of that. So your tax bill is not calculated on the full $200,000 gross assessed value of your home. It's on an amount after those deductions are taken off. So you end up paying on somewhere between half and maybe 2/3 of the value of your home. It varies for each home based upon the actual gross assessed value. So in this case, if you look at the ones going down, the far left side are again the taxing districts, and then we have potential values across the top. So in that peach, it's if your home is worth $200,000 is that starting gross assessed value. In Chandler Boone Township, the fire territory increase would amount to roughly $19.25 a month, or almost $231 a year. So that's the first year. That's in the first year of the territory. If your home is worth a bit more than that, at $281,834, you see the monthly increase is only $8.60. That's because the tax rate pushes this property at this value to the tax caps. Tax caps are written into the Indiana Constitution. They create a maximum amount of property tax that can be collected on a given property. So if it's your primary residence, the most your tax bill would be, with certain exceptions related to school debt that is approved by referendum, you will pay no more than 1% of your gross assessed value in your property tax bill. So in general, here in Warwick County, if your tax rate is $2 or below, you are not yet quite at your tax caps. If you are at 2, or the fire territory pushes you to a $2 rate, which I told you this was a little over $2, you will then be at the caps. So on that $200,000 home, the maximum tax bill would be $2,000. On the $281,000 home, that maximum tax bill would be $2,810. It gets pushed to the tax caps. That's why the increase per month is less, because the rate is going with the territory up to $2. Then a $300,000 home was already over at the tax caps, so the change, again, is just pushing it to where it would be naturally because of the cap. It's the same for Ohio Township. Ohio Township, however, though, their rate stays below $2. So homes in Ohio Township will not reach the tax cap with the fire territory in the first year. So there in Ohio Township, your rate is increase will be about $13 a month or $160 a year roughly if your home is around $200,000. And then for Chandler, Ohio Township, their rate is already higher. So they are at the tax caps for the first year at a $200,000 home. I have some more information about that coming up. But so if you see, we have there for a $281,000 house, they'll have zero change. What that means is the revenue that is received gets reallocated amongst the overlapping units. So that's where we talk about the circuit breaker loss coming in. You're not collecting new revenue, it's just creating more circuit breaker for the overlapping units. So I have some pie charts, hopefully to help illustrate. I'm going to explain this one, and it will apply the same to all of the others going through. So the first page is a $200,000 home if you live in Chandler, Boone Township. So this is where I've noted what those overlapping units are. The sort of light blue wedge there towards the top is Warwick County Community School. This current tax bill is $1,765. There's a wedge there for the Booneville Warwick County Public Library, a wedge for the Warwick County Solid Waste District, Warwick County itself. There's a portion that will still go to Boone Township for their other fire or non-fire related services such as township assistance or cemeteries. And then there for Chandler, currently of that $1,765, everything going to Chandler is $632. The little wedge out there of $42 that's red with the dots in it, that's what is indicated for fire service. The rest of it is other town of Chandler functions, their police department, streets, parks. So the addition of the territory would in theory leave the others constant, but the whole amount would bump up in that fire territory amount on the right-hand side of the page. So it goes instead of $42, then $273 would be going to the territory. And it's the same on the next page. Again, this is Chandler Boone. This one is one that gets pushed to the circuit breakers at the higher level, at the higher value home. So this one is where things sort of get reallocated. We no longer have the same amount of $867,000 going to the school. We now have estimated $796 going to the school. So to make up for what goes to fire, the other units will see somewhat less. That's the circuit breaker impact. Then we have for Ohio Township, the same units, currently $113 from the township. With the territory, it would go to $273 for that $200,000 home. We still don't get pushed to the tax caps with the $281,000 home. They have a much higher place in before their tax caps are going to kick in. Then in Chandler, Ohio Township, the first year, the $200,000 home would be pushed to the circuit breaker. If you notice, the school was getting $564 prior, $536 after. And then here's the other situation. Already at the tax caps, the amount of the tax bill does not change. The revenue just gets reallocated amongst the overlapping units. So of course, it's going to affect other types of units too, not just your primary residential home. We have a 2% class of circuit breaker loss. Those properties are agricultural properties, second homes, rental homes, vacation homes, assisted living facilities. Those fall into a 2% cap, so 2% of their gross assessed value. And then we have a 3% class that is commercial and anything else that doesn't fit into the first two. So if you have a $100,000 piece of agricultural land or you have a rental home in the town of Chandler, the pink and the green box here would apply. So there is, starting this year, a new deduction on 2% properties that has not been there previously. So whereas previously you were taxed at the full value of that 2% property, there is currently this year a 6% deduction, and it will step up each year over the next 5 years as well. So if you have a $100,000 piece of ag property or, like I said, a rental home, it'd be about an additional $11.85 a month if that property is valued at $100,000, or roughly $23 if it's at about $200,000. And then if you have a $500,000 piece of commercial property, it would be roughly an additional $101 a month for a total of a little over $1,200 for the year. So again, it's the same type, $14 if it's a $100,000 piece of property in the township. Chandler, Ohio Township, you're already at $2 rates. Again, if you are at a $2 rate, a 2% tax rate property will be at their caps. So it's being pushed to the caps at that $100,000 and $200,000 property. That's why the incremental rates or the amounts there change so little. You're not at $3 rates anywhere yet, so the 3% properties are not going to hit their property tax caps. So we can jump ahead and talk about some impacts to other units in the county. I've already explained this. This slide goes through the 1%, 2%, and 3% information that I just talked about. So here are circuit breaker credits. This is not additional revenues. This is actually increases to circuit breaker loss that will be for impacts on the overlapping units. So we have 2026 estimated. We have what we believe 2027 would look like without the fire territory. And then each year, estimated impacts for 27, 8, 9, up through 2031 with changes to the territory. So the territory will have circuit breaker loss as well. That's why I said the fire department will have to fit their budget into the revenues that they have available after fire or after circuit breaker loss. But you can see that it will shift amounts of circuit breaker. Circuit breaker generally will go up each year, and it will shift amounts to other units as well. If there's anybody here from any particular other unit, if you're here from the school or the library and you have questions, please feel free to let me know. The other type of impact, even though it's a null point now, would be the local income tax. In prior years, if there was a territory formed, there was a reallocation of local income tax within the county. But because of Senate Enrolled Act 1, there will not be any impacts to local income tax either this year or next year to local income tax because of the territory. Everything that happens to local income tax is a year in arrears. So this year, local income taxes are being distributed based upon levies as they stood in 2026. So the first year, the fire territory wouldn't be until 27, so it wouldn't make any changes until 2028. But then anyway, they are completely revamping it, and it will be up to the county whether the fire territory receives any local income tax, whether the township receives any local income tax, and I believe Chandler is at the point that they can adopt their own local income tax if need be. So Warwick County currently only has public safety, local income tax, and economic development income tax. Those are, and I didn't clarify this, those are payroll taxes. So wherever you live, even if you don't work in the same county, if you work over in Vanderburgh, the HR department at your job in Vanderburgh pulls out your payroll taxes based upon the Warwick County rate, and it comes back to Warwick County and is then redistributed here. And conversely, if somebody lives in Vanderburgh and works in Warwick, their money goes back to Vanderburgh County for them for distribution there. There's some details here of the changes because of SEA 1 coming up in 2028. And then we are just showing the public safety and local edit income tax just as not changing. If there's any change in 2027, it will be because of some reallocation of levies in 2026 and or increased adjusted gross income across the county. And it will be the same thing for edit. It will be distributed unless adjusted gross income increases, it will be distributed the same. So currently only Chandler receives those two portions, those two types of local income tax. The township only receives public safety because they went to the county and appealed per legislation allows for some of their local county's public safety income tax. The other thing, as I mentioned, is the motor vehicle taxes and how those would be reallocated. So again, we're assuming the same amount each year. Those amounts of total BMV tax don't tend to go up a lot incrementally every year. So we're just assuming the shift based upon the impact of the fire territory under the same amount of revenue. Could it be higher? Yes, it could be. We don't know for sure that it will be. But you can see, for example, we have what we're considering to be the baseline in 2026 without the territory, and then what that looks like going forward for the other units. So if you look at the county, for example, they currently get a little over 2 million, almost $2,083,000 in excise taxes. We would estimate they would drop to about 1.9 million the first year of the territory, and whereas the territory would receive some that they're not currently receiving. The township will receive somewhat less, Chandler will receive somewhat less, but everything else is reallocated amongst the other units so that the territory receives some of that revenue. On the back page is my information, as well as Paige Sansone. She's the principal that I work for, directly with, for this product service line. She's worked with fire territories across the state for about 28 years, roughly. We've been involved in a number of them in other locations. So if you have questions or think of something after the fact, we have an email address. Feel free to send me a question, and I can respond back. So now I guess we will open it up for public comment. Jeff? Do you need that? Probably not.
So we're open for public comment. We asked folks to sign in if they want to make a comment. We're going to observe. All right. Again, with 3-minute rule. We have one person signed up, Terry Dable. Terry, the floor is yours.
Yes, I'm Terry Daybalt. I live about halfway between this station and the one in Paradise. My question, or my thought is, we had a situation over at the church at Outer Lincoln, 261, the big church over there. The response time was great, but Chandler was there, Boonville was there, Yankeetown was there, and this station was there. What do I get when I call 911 when all the stations are out like that? Or am I going to get, well, we'll get there when we can. I think with this, what we're proposing here tonight would basically answer that question. I can't see where the tax increase would be that much to nullify that. So I'm very much in favor of it. I'd rather be proactive about these situations than reactive. That's my feelings on it. So I'm for it. Thank you.
Is that glued in there? All right, my name's Eric. I live on Firstal Road in Warwick County. Been there about 14 years. There's been a lot of numbers up on the board, so I'm going to try to paint a couple pictures because I'm a picture guy, and hopefully I can illustrate my thoughts and my support for the fire territory. So I lived in Evansville for about 14 years. I bought my first house there, and I lived about a mile and a half from a fire station. And if I called 911, what you get is 4 guys, and they'd be there in about a minute and a half, 3 minutes, somewhere around there. And what that .87 number Chief Foreman was talking about, what that gets you is, in about 8 minutes, you get 20 guys, a chief, a safety officer, and an investigator. Now, that's not what we're looking at here, obviously. That's a totally different situation, but that's what that ratio is looking at. That's the comparison between that and .1 something here for Warwick County. So clearly that's a benefit of having those numbers show up, and people don't really know what they don't know until they know they don't have that. So fire service is a insurance policy in my eyes, And having that is invaluable. You don't need them until you need them, and then you want them 10 minutes ago. So I never used the fire service in Evansville. I did use police service once. That's not why I moved to Work County, by the way. I had 2 calls for service next to my house. My neighbor had a stroke in the front yard. Luckily, I was out doing the yard work, and I saw him out there. I wondered why he was mowing one spot repeatedly several times. I was like, come on. So I ran in the house, called 911. That was before everybody had their cell phones on their hips. And I went over there to help him. And Warwick County EMS got there pretty quick. I was amazed. I was happy. He made a full recovery. But it got me thinking, who's coming next? Kind of like the gentleman before me. If Warwick hadn't been in the Alcoa station, who's coming next? I didn't have a fire truck coming. I don't know. This building wasn't here at that time. And then recently, 2 years ago, my neighbor's house caught on fire. And I was asleep, middle of the night, and my neighbor called. And he goes, hey man, house is on fire. I said, what are you talking about? Neighbor's house is on fire. I said, you call 911? He goes, no, I called you. I said, hang up and call 911. So I put on my flip-flops, I go outside, and sure enough, the house is on fire. It's too far gone for me to go inside in flip-flops. But I heard engine 62 coming down the road. And that made me feel good. If that had happened a few years before, I don't know what time that would have happened. I don't know who was coming then. So again, that's that insurance policy I was talking about. So Warwick County is growing a lot. When I moved out here, you didn't see those twinkling lights out the window. This building wasn't here. My time's up. I can't even wrap it up. I'll wrap it up. These guys weren't back here, and it's not going to stop growing. I feel like we're behind the 8 ball here. We're playing catch up, and this is a playing disc to catch up. We're not ahead of the game. So not doing this, I think we deserve it. I'm 5 miles from this station, and I think I deserve something a little closer. I want something. I don't know if I deserve it, but I want something closer to me for me and my family. So I just want to consider that when you're making your vote.
Now you're making us hold this. Okay, my name's Mike Ewald. I'm a deputy chief with the Evansville Fire Department. I live at 8788 Framewood Drive, just right down the road here. Lived here about 25 years or more. So at Evansville, we see some of the same problems. I started out as a volunteer firefighter, small town in Illinois. So I've seen showing up in the daytime with having 2 or 3 firefighters respond to the call and trying to do something to help. I also see now on the other side of that, a totally career fire department that, like Eric said, shows up with 18, 19 firefighters in 7 minutes to a house fire. So I've seen both sides of that. We had a house fire the other morning where we showed up with those personnel. We did all the things we needed to do. They pulled 3 children out. We called more units. We ended up with 8 fire apparatus and 32 firefighters there for one house fire. And our crews did an amazing job, and it still wasn't enough. But I have seen where early CPR, early defibrillation, has made an absolute difference in saving lives. And that's because we got there in that 3.5 minutes. So response times do matter. At Evansville, we're changing where we place apparatus. We've shifted resources east. We are taking over the ambulance service. All those are done with the hopes of reducing those response times, because those do matter. I pay for insurance for my house. I pay for auto insurance, pay for life insurance. I try like hell not to use any of those. So I obviously don't want to call the fire department either. If I want to avoid that if I can. But I am totally in favor of another $150, $250 a year to have that peace of mind that we've got professionals able to respond and get there in a timely manner. So I fully support this. You guys in starting the career department, or combination department, have done a great job. You've done it right. You just need more of it.
Those are all the folks we have signed up to speak. If you're like me, you'll be on the way home and you'll think of this really great comment or this really great question you wanted to make. If that happens, you can come back March 2nd in the afternoon, or you can come back March 2nd, I'm out of time, March 2nd in the evening, or drop a line. The whole purpose of this is to push this information, and it's a lot of information. Both presentations are available. There's the financial ones back there. This is to get the information out to everyone so they understand the financial impact and they understand what the fire department's trying to do. I can't replace the testimony of the three brave gentlemen that wanted to get up and speak on this, because that's what you get for it. We can talk about process, we can talk about the financial impact, and the chief can go through all the NFPA and all these other requirements they're trying to meet, but it's trying to narrow those gaps in services. Or if you just really liked hearing the financial report or just really liked hearing my part, come back at either one of these. You might be a glutton for punishment like me. We will be back, though. We'll be back right here at 3 o'clock on March 2nd, and then we're going to go across town. We're going to do the exact same show again at 7 o'clock, and then there will be no vote tonight. There will be no further presentation tonight. Come up with a question. You want to just write a comment, write a letter, anything, send it to the trustee, send it to the department, send it to the town. We're happy to put it in the record. I appreciate everybody being here tonight. We're going to stick around for a little bit. But other than that, we can adjourn both sessions, and we'll see you. If you're satisfied, we won't see you again. If something new comes up, we'll see you either one of the other public hearings or the final meeting. Thanks for coming.